Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for being here today. And of course, thank you for your service. We're incredibly grateful for all that you do. Secretary Panetta, you said in your November remarks to the Center for American Security about al-Qaeda, we've slowed the primary cancer, but we know that the cancer has also metastasized to other parts of the global body. Presumably, you're including Yemen, Somalia, Mali, and elsewhere. How would you recommend reorganizing our strategy to stem the growing and changing al-Qaeda global threat?
We are working on that with the other agencies involved. What is needed here is a comprehensive strategy overall that focuses on al-Qaeda and its various affiliates to make sure that they have no place to hide. We've obviously done a very effective job in the Fatah. We've done a good job in Afghanistan, Iraq. We're doing a good job in Yemen and Somalia. As these affiliates are beginning to appear elsewhere in Mali, in North Africa, in Syria, we have got to develop a comprehensive strategy that allows us to be able to develop operations against them wherever they're at. We're in the process of working on that strategy. We've already implemented some steps to try to deal with that, but we really do need to take a big picture view of all of the elements of al-Qaeda and how we can best make sure that they have no place to hide.
I have some specific follow-up questions that I'll submit for the record, but they may be classified, the answers, so that's why I'll submit them separately. I want to turn to cyber. According to recent reports, the Pentagon has approved a major expansion of its U.S. Cyber Command to include growing its ranks from approximately 900 to 4,900 personnel cyber warriors. According to these same reports, there will be three types of forces: those who will fortify DoD's own networks, those who will help commanders abroad plan and execute offensive attacks, and those who will protect critical infrastructure like power grids and power plants. Needless to say, this is absolutely necessary to protect our nation against what is becoming a leading security threat. However, I'm particularly interested in the last group, those who will protect national infrastructure. The majority of this critical infrastructure is owned and operated by the private sector. Given this, will the military rely on the National Guard, which is able to operate both under both Title 10 and 32 authorities?
Senator, your description of how we are trying to prepare the force is accurate. We clearly don't have authority to do all of that, but we are trying to grow the right force so that if it became necessary and we had the authority to do all of those things, we would be prepared. The National Guard will always be part of any endeavor, and I think we'll find the right balance of active and guard as we move ahead.
Are there any particular obstacles that you can see now in terms of using the Guard with a greater deal of responsibility in cyber?
No, not uniquely, not any obstacles that we don't have as well on the active side.
And a broader question, how do you see our plan for recruiting and retaining enough cyber personnel, particularly ones capable of working in the offensive side? And one idea that I had considered thinking through is, we do ROTC, but imagine doing ROT specifically for cyber personnel. So you're getting these young men and women coming out of MIT and Stanford and RPI who are some of the country's greatest engineers early on to hone their skills for cyber defense and cyber attack missions within the DoD.
Senator, let me just say, in talking to Keith Alexander at NSA, he does not have any shortage of young people that want to be part of that effort. They view it as an opportunity to get involved, be on the cutting edge of the technology with regards to cyber, develop tremendous skills there, and be able to then go out and use those skills in the private sector. So he's got a lot of young people, a lot of young, very bright people who are anxious to participate in this effort.
To include coming out of our military academies.
Mm-hmm. Now, turning to the subject of the hearing, Benghazi specifically, I would like to talk a little bit about what you've learned from these events and how you advise the next Secretary of Defense to better prepare for similar events, and how the department should adapt to the next generation, including obviously the metastasization of Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups, and cyber attack, both of which obviously pose very serious threats to the security of our homeland. I'm specifically concerned that this was an attack in a country that the U.S. helped liberate from decades of dictatorship. That day, September 11, 2012, witnessed demonstrations in other countries that were part of the Arab Spring, countries that were supported, that we supported the voices of democracy. But throughout these countries, we continue to see jihadists and fundamentalist movements align against us and against our interests, and perhaps funded by some of the Gulf countries. What leverage what leverage should we be using with the Gulf governments to address the support for groups that threaten our security?
As I've testified here, and I certainly would give this guidance to my successor. Yeah, in dealing with these threats, you have to address each area of concern. First of all, you've got to develop better host country capabilities. That's one of the gaps right now in some of these countries that we just saw, that they have not been able to develop a sufficient host force that provides that kind of security. We have got to work with them. We've got to bring as much leverage as we can on these countries, that they have a responsibility to be the first line of security for our embassies, and we have to help them develop the training and capabilities that are necessary to do that. Secondly, we've got to harden these facilities. We do have to strengthen the security around some of these embassies. Be able to develop, add the additional Marines that are necessary to try to help provide that security as well, and ensure that they have the right training for the security guards that are around that embassy. Thirdly, we need better intelligence. We just absolutely have to have good intelligence. Whatever we do, wherever we're located, if we don't get that advanced intelligence, that heads up that we need, there isn't any way that we can respond in time. So we've got to have better intelligence as to what these groups are doing. And then lastly, we have to have a response force in the vicinity to be able to respond quickly. Once we get a heads up, once we get an indication that something's going to happen, forces have to be in place and have a shorter response time in order to be able to deploy. There's no question these response times are too long, and so we're trying to shorten that. But I also want to just let you know that we are dealing with the problem of distance in that area. It takes hours to be able to respond. It's just the nature of being able to notify people, get them ready, get airlift there, make sure they can move quickly, and then fly to the target. All of that has to be considered. But the more heads up we get, the better off we can respond.
Thank you both very much again for your service and your testimony.